Yeah, the acronym is PLT, Police Liaison Team, and 4 officers came to my reception area in my office. The lead on it was Sergeant Lee. I don't recall his first name. They came and basically advised me that communications had broken down with the protest leaders, and that they weren't communicating anymore with the PLTs. And this was a significant issue in their ability to continue to try to negotiate an end to the on the ground in terms of the things they need to do, and that they had asked to meet with someone from the city to as a show of good faith. I'm paraphrasing what he told me, my recollection of it, from someone from the city, and they want to meet with me to be able to discuss the situation and what's happening. And I was reluctant when he first told me. I was, I'd say, reluctant to say, why would I meet with them? We never had any intention, the mayor, myself, the mayor's office, anybody on my team had any intention of meeting with the protest leaders. That wasn't on our radar or anything we were planning to do. But they were imploring me to meet with them because they needed to show that they could actually get me to the table to have a conversation with them.
Did they explain to you why? Did they say why they had lost the communication with the protesters? What had happened there?
They didn't tell me. No.
Okay.
And at that point, I wasn't convinced that I should meet with them because I felt that that was opening up another door in terms of a signal that we're prepared to start negotiating. I told them that I need to call the mayor, and we brought Sir Jarpan as chief of staff into the call. So I went into the next room in my boardroom, called the mayor, and told them that they want me to meet with them to have as a show of good faith to police need us to meet with them. He was very reluctant. His initial reaction is we shouldn't, and thought that doing that was going to put pressure on the federal government in terms of, if we meet with them, someone else would have to meet with them. And Sir Jarpan was kind of the same view, so we batted it around a bit, and I basically advised the mayor that I thought I should meet with them and hear what they have to say, and maybe there's something we can get in return. And it won't involve you. It'll be me. Doing the discussion, and you're out of it. It's not a political leadership meeting. And
did the mayor express any concerns about this?
He didn't tell me not to meet them, and he didn't tell me to meet them. He accepted that. At the end, I said, "I'm going to meet them." I basically made a statement that I'm going to meet them. So he didn't say don't, and he didn't say do it. But he was reluctant at the beginning. The first part of the conversation was he just thought it was a bad idea. And so I went back out and told them that I would meet with them, the protest organizers. I didn't know who they were bringing. I didn't know who the parties were. Police said, great. They left and they ran over to one of the hotels where the participants were. And they came back a couple hours later, probably around noon, with 3 people, Tom Marazzo, Keith Wilson, and Eva Chepiak, I believe is how we pronounce her last name.
Yep.
Even if I got that right. And they arrived with the 4 PLT members.
And sorry, this was around noon, you said?
It was probably around noon, if I recall. It was several hours later, over noon hour, 1 o'clock, around that area, that time. And so they came in, and we had another boardroom down the hallway in City Hall at the Heritage Building. And Tom Marazzo asked if he could speak to me alone, and we went into the boardroom alone. And everyone else waited outside, the 4 police officers and the 2 lawyers, Keith and Eva. And Tom and I began having a conversation about why they're here, his background, what happened to him, his story, just getting to know each other, basically. And so he explained why he was here, what the issues were, what happened to him in terms of the vaccine mandate, et cetera. And then we talked about, from my recollection, that look, if they wanted a meeting with the mayor, And I basically advised them that if they're going to have a meeting with the mayor, they have to show something in good faith back. And that was a discussion when the PLTs first came to see me. When I came back out from seeing the mayor, I forgot to mention that, is I said, well, if I'm going to meet with them, I need to get something back in return. I'm not going to meet with them just for the sake of meeting with them. And the police officer suggested, well, maybe we can start getting them, ask them to move the trucks out of some of the neighborhoods. I said, well, that would be a good thing to try and relieve the pressure on those people in those neighborhoods if they would agree to do that.
So OPS was the one who made the suggestion that maybe the exchange for meeting with the mayor would be getting the trucks out of the neighborhood.
That's right.
Okay.
So when we were talking to Tom, and I don't remember it was exactly with Tom or when everyone else came in, when Keith and Eva came in after.
Sorry, when Keith and Eva came in after, did the PLT officers also join, or was it just...
They came in also,
Okay.
yeah. So they all joined the meeting at that time. And then we had a discussion about the protests and would they be willing to move trucks out of the neighborhoods. They said yes, they'd be willing to do that. And we said, well, then we have to work out the logistics and they'll get back to us. So we met for about, in total, about an hour and a half, I'd say, maybe 90 minutes. They left with the understanding that we would reconnect and talk about what the terms would be of them moving the trucks and the conditions under which that would happen and get an agreement to do that.
And what was your understanding for why the protesters wanted to meet with the mayor?
Well, they didn't tell me specifically, but I assume that it was a symbolic, significant gesture. If somebody, no one was meeting with them of any official capacity at the political level. And I would think that, you'd have to ask them when they testify, but I assumed the mayor was the first step in trying to open the door to meet with the prime minister or someone senior at the federal government.
And so at the end of the meeting, what was decided? Who would do what? What were the next steps that were going to be taken after that meeting?
I think we exchanged the numbers, and then we said that we'd get back. I don't recall exactly that we'd reconnect with each other and start talking about that. Then, a number of things happened after that in terms of updating the mayor and Serge later in the day and updating Chief Slowly. Those are all other aspects I'm sure you'll get to.
Well, my understanding is that the next day you did indicate to Chief Slowly and Deputy Chief Ferguson, Deputy Chief Bell, that this had taken place and relayed a little bit of the information that had been exchanged. Is that right?
I did. I told them the outcome of the meeting with the PLTs and with the protesters,
and
protest leaders.
Did they express any concerns about that?
Well, there were a couple points. I mean, it depends where we are in the story here. We hadn't at that point figured out the logistics of, or the terms of what the agreement would be. That happened later in the week and didn't get finalized till Sunday the 13th, I believe. So at that point, it was more an indication of what I gave an overview of to Chief Slowly and his team on what the discussion was, what they had asked for, and what we were going to pursue in terms of, or what we were going to start pursuing in terms of trying to get an agreement to move trucks out of the neighborhood.
So at that point, the deal was, if you move trucks out of the neighborhood, we'll facilitate a meeting with the mayor. So it was kind of high level.
That was the concept, that's right.
Right, that was the concept. So no details had been fleshed out at that point?
None.
Okay. So you exchanged numbers, you briefed the mayor about what had happened, and then what happened?
Well, about 2 days later, I think it was on the 10th, the mayor received a call or a text, I'm not sure. I never clarified that, but he was put in contact, or he was contacted by Dean French. And Dean French told the mayor that, what the mayor can speak for himself, but my understanding was that he was trying to help, and that he was trying to help to get a resolution to this agreement that we had. And the mayor passed on Dean French to Serge Arpin, and I believe they had a conversation. I don't know exactly what they talked about. And then Serge Arpin gave Dean French my number, and he contacted me and basically announced himself as a helpful third party that was going to try to mediate between the two to try and come up with an agreement.
Okay, so then you became the point person for that.
No, I became the point person to get to the place where the logistics were agreed to, but the actual negotiation of the terms of the letter that was eventually sent to Ms. Litch and that she replied back agreeing to was done mostly through Sir Jarpan, the mayor's office.
Okay.
I was engaged in that, but the negotiations were happening between them.
Sorry, specifically the letter talks about Wellington Street. Was that one of the points of discussion with OPS?
It was generally, yes.
Okay. So then, if I understand correctly what you're saying, on the 10th, Dean French called and announced himself as potentially being helpful or a potential mediator. And then the letters were drafted and sent, I believe, on the 12th of February. And in that time, you were having discussions with Chief Slowly. Was it Chief Slowly or anybody else within OPS? Deputy Chief Ferguson?
No, it was, there were a couple calls. The one call, the final call was before the letters went out on, it was over noon hour on the Sunday, the 13th. It was right to the wire in terms of when the letters finally were approved.
Okay, so they're dated the 12th, but you're saying they were exchanged on the 13th.
That's what I believe, but I could be corrected.
Okay. And so while they're being finalized, your involvement is getting some input from OPS and suggesting some wording to the letter, including the area where the trucks are going to relocate to. Is that right?
Yeah, Serge had various drafts. It was going back and forth, and I don't remember the drafts, but different language, and I was providing some edits and some advice on the final language in the letter.
And why was Wellington Street chosen? Who chose Wellington Street?
Well, that came up as part of the discussion initially, I believe, with the protesters, where the protest leaders, my apologies, the leadership, where there was no other place to put the trucks. There were very few options in terms of where to put the trucks, and the discussion was that we wanted to reduce the footprint in the area to get them out of the neighborhoods and have them more condensed in one more manageable enforcement area. And so Wellington Street was an option, but it was understood that Wellington couldn't accommodate all the trucks from the neighborhoods. There just wasn't enough room. So part of the discussion was, would some of them agree to move to a site, I believe it was in the West End, Arnprior, there was some other site they had, if they could go there. They wanted to get onto S-Jam. We didn't want them on S-Jam. So there was discussion internally about the parameters of where they might go, and that's what translated into the logistical meeting that we finally had on Sunday night, the 13th, when Superintendent Drummond, myself, and Kim Ayotte met with a group of representatives.
Okay, but by then, the idea that they would be relocating to Wellington had already been determined, right?
Yes.
Okay. In your call earlier that morning, or at the noon call, did anybody on the call, Steve Bell, Trish Ferguson, Peter Slowly, did anybody raise any concerns with the arrangement that had been reached?
Yes, Chief Slowly raised concerns about the resource requirements to be able to enact this kind of operation depending on the scope. He was concerned about his ability to do that, and he was concerned about what happens if we go through all this effort and it's not successful. We're back to square one, and we put a lot of resources into it. So we expressed that concern. The two deputy chiefs, the acting and Chief Bell and acting Deputy Chief Bell and acting Deputy Chief Ferguson, both expressed that they supported this because it would reduce the footprint and make it more manageable for their resources, because they were spread too thin, covering that larger geography. And so they expressed support for the movement of the trucks.
And so despite Chief Slowly's reservations, did he ultimately agree that this should move forward?
I don't recall that he actually said he agreed, but he didn't object to the point where, because he could have obviously stopped it, but he didn't. I never heard him say, we're a go. he was basically silent on that point.
Right, but he did provide you Superintendent Drummond as an OPS representative.
He did.
Okay. And so now we're at this meeting, February 13th. You said it was you, Mr. Ayotte, and who else was there?
I don't remember everybody's names that was on the list. Superintendent Drummond was there. I think, I'm trying to remember, Keith Wilson was there. No, Eva was there. Keith Wilson was there, I believe, but maybe not. I'd have to go back. You'd have to go back to show me the document. I don't remember the other people's names. Tom Barber was there, I know that.
Chris Barber?
Chris Barber, sorry, was there.
Was Tom Marazzo there?
No.
No?
I don't remember him.
Okay. How many protest individuals would you say were there? How many protesters were there?
I think there were 6 of them altogether. I don't know if Keith Wilson was there. If I saw it in front of me, I saw the document in terms of the notes that Acting Superintendent Drummond took, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know if they're available. They weren't available yesterday, but I'm not sure if they're available now. But in any event, there were a group of protest leaders that were there, you, yourself, Mr. Ayotte, and we don't have a lot of time, so if you can just briefly maybe tell us what happened at that meeting, and then we will have to get my friends to pick it up from there.
Effectively, we discussed how it could unfold, what the expectations were, what we all wanted. The people that represented the protesters were clear that they don't represent all the protesters, so they're going to have some trouble getting everybody convinced based on who was on the streets to all participate and move, and that they would be going out that night and working truck by truck, talking to everybody to get them in line or aligned to support the movement because it was a good thing for them. And they also made it clear that not everybody will want, some people may not want to go to that other alternate site, the farmers area they rented. I think it was in Armont, I don't remember. And that they wanted to extend the footprint a bit more down to Deschamps, but we said no. And Rob Drummond was effectively leading those discussions in terms of where the trucks would go, how they'd be placed, and as I said, how that process would work in the morning, who'd be assigned out there from Ottawa Police. And so when we left the meeting, it was understood we had a map of where the trucks would be moved, what areas we wanted to clear out, and Rob went back then to talk to his command and the NRCC and his incident commanders to bring the resources required to be able to do that. And we left that night after a couple hours, and the operation started the next morning.
And I understand at some point the operation stopped. Do you know why it stopped?
Yeah, mid-morning it stopped because, and there were some exchanges. I think I don't know if it was a phone call or text with, I was mostly communicating with Keith Wilson at the time, where he was expressing that what he was being told on the ground is that there was miscommunication between some of the police officers and what the orders were, and or the operation was, and weren't allowing some trucks to move on to Wellington. Eventually that got sorted out, and they did move a number of heavy trucks. I think the count was around 40, but that's still in dispute. And a number of light trucks also left, and we ended up clearing a number of streets. But yeah, there were some communications issues, some logistical issues where some of them, my understanding was some of the light vehicles didn't want to move and were blocking other vehicles from moving. So there wasn't an alignment of purpose by everybody that was on all those streets. They had different reasons for wanting to stay.
And I'm just going to take you to the last document, OTT 7480. And this is an email. If we go down, this is 7480. Yeah, that does look right. Okay, let's go up for a second. Yes. So Larry Brookson, do you know who he is?
Yes, I do.
Who is he?
He's I believe his position is he's the director of the parliamentary precinct security, but I know Larry personally.
Oh, okay. Yes, because the email is quite informal, so I figured you must have had some pre-existing relationship with him. He says, "Hi, Steve. My office is looking to set up a call this morning. Wanted to provide you with some context of my concern regarding the City of Ottawa's recent decision which led to Wellington being turned into a parking lot of 200-plus trucks. Quite honestly, Steve, I'm at a loss as how this sort of agreement could have been worked out with a clear disregard to security, especially considering that we just finished a bomb blast assessment, which included the threat of explosives being transferred via large vehicles, hoping we can find time in the morning." So is it your understanding that that PPS, the Parliamentary Protective Service, did not have notice or information about what was going to be happening with the relocation of the trucks onto Wellington?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that, but I do know that the PPS was embedded in the National Capital Regional Command Center. They are a member of Intersect. I know that Mr. Brookson spoke to Chief Slowly the late afternoon the day before when the trucks were being moved. So, you know, I think it's a fair assumption for me to make that Mr. Brookson was well informed in terms of what was happening on the ground from a situational awareness perspective. You know, the bomb blast assessment, quite frankly, I'm not disregarding it, but it was a little late then. We already had hundreds of trucks up on Wellington Street to be concerned about moving another 40 trucks up there. So, you know, that's his role to take care of the security of the Hill, and it's an important role, and I respect that. But at the time, I felt that Mr. Brookson, when he reached out to me, had the information, especially after he spoke to Chief Slowly, and I spoke to Chief Slowly after he had spoken to Mr. Brookson, and Chief Slowly advised me what the conversation was about, where he informed him what was happening. So I know there was some reporting about I didn't call him back. Events kind of overtook things on the 15th. Chief Slowly was in the in the late stages of his tenure, and the deal had fallen apart in terms of moving the trucks anyways up onto Wellington Street by Tuesday.
Okay, and so, did you tell anybody at the federal level yourself about this deal? I know February 8th is when you kind of had that discussion, and it also coincided with a tripartite meeting. Is that something you would have brought up at a tripartite meeting?
I told, I'm not sure when, but I know I told Rob Stewart, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety, and I also sent Rob Stewart the letters that were agreed to, the agreement letters.
And so ultimately, the mayor never met with the protesters, is that right?
They never fulfilled their end of the bargain, so he never met with them.